Call to order, April 6th. No one from the public is here, so I'm guessing there's no public comment. Are there any additions to the agenda? I have one super quick one, just to get it on the record. Kale Romanoff has decided to take advantage of the fact that we had multiple volunteers for the Planning Commission to resign, but offered to be a resource for us in the future if we ever need him. So that was super nice of Kale. If there's nothing else, then we'll go to approval of minutes. Does anyone have any comments on January 5th, January 19th, February 2nd, February 16th, or March 16th? No? Well, then maybe we can get a motion to approve the January 5th, January 19th, February 2nd, February 16th, and March 16th.
I wasn't there for a couple of them, so I don't know.
Oh, so we'll do them separate then. Just in
Yeah,
case.
and I don't know which ones I wasn't at, so I don't have that in front of me.
We have such a,
There was two.
yeah, we have such a, we have such good attendance that I just say we're covered no matter.
I know, but I can't. Then
You can't vote on those
Right.
ones.
That's right.
Let's see. Well, you can vote on this one.
Yeah.
So January 5th.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion. Move that we accept the January 5th, 2023 minutes as Nick circulated them. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That takes us to January 19th. You were there, Lee.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we approve the January 19th, 2023 minutes as Nick circulated them.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. February 2nd. You were not there for these.
I think the next two I was.
Okay.
This one and the next one.
So this one and the next one. So let me check the next one real quick. Yep. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the February 2nd and February 16th minutes in the form Nick circulated them. Is there a second? David, all in favor? And that takes us to March 16th, which you were obviously here for. So I'll make a motion that we approve the March 16th, 2023 minutes. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're caught up. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay, so as we discussed at the last meeting, we were going to chop off is not the word, but go for a couple things because the approval process is, thanks to Nick researching this, is a little easier than we thought. We were going to take sort of a couple of the things we'd already done work on, primarily trails and ADUs, circle back to them, make sure we just refresh everyone. Well, on trails, refresh everyone on what we had agreed on, make sure everyone's still good with it. And then on ADUs, try to finalize it because they never sort of finalized it. And then when we have the two of those bundled up or done, Nick can maybe refresh all of us on the approval process, and then we can maybe get these in the approval process and put a stamp on them. Done.
Yeah, that's good.
I think we're starting with ADUs according to what you sent around. Well, trails is super quick. Should we start with trails maybe?
Yeah, I think maybe we
Okay.
should just start with a quick
Okay.
refresher on
Yep.
on the process.
So
now. Yeah.
on the process?
Yeah.
Oh, you go
yeah.
for it. You exactly.
So basically, we've, in order to looking into it a little bit, the process pretty much goes with a bunch of caveats. This body approves which language it wants for a bylaw amendment, transmits that to the clerk and the select board, first holds a public hearing. This does not count as that public hearing. Holds a public hearing with all of the applicable public notification and whatnot, which would be up to me to take care of. Once that public hearing has passed and the language has been, the bylaws have been, public has had a chance to comment and whatnot, and everyone agrees that any change is necessary, are good. And basically once that public hearing has gone through and everything's been approved through that process, then at that point, the planning commission transmits that intended amendment or amendments to Sherry and the select board, and then it's pretty much the ball's in their court. They then have to hold at least one hearing before they can then vote to approve it. Yeah.
So even if we have to comply to the state regulations, we need approval from the select board?
Correct. Yes.
Really?
Yeah, that's part of the statute that
So how could the select board not approve it?
they could hold a public hearing and then I guess decide that
We don't want to
They
abide by
don't
what
want
the state says we have to do?
I see where you're going. I guess you could do that if you're the select board, but it wouldn't be super smart, because then if someone would just sue you and say you're not in compliance with the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, recommendation from the planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost always. I mean, it is always, but that is the process.
Okay.
yeah. Oh, believe me, I wish that it was faster.
No, I thought if we were making a change to our regulations that were based on updates, not, or
Yeah.
things that we felt were more relevant to today, not based on the state saying, hey, you gotta do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know of any shortcut you can use to do that, unfortunately. But I'm open to being educated about it. So if anyone can dig something up to that effect, I'd love to hear it. However, absent a shortcut, this is the best way forward. So what I was gonna,
The select board actually can vote for or no on it, and it doesn't have to go in front of the public even.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but typically speaking, yes, they do bring it before the public.
It's
And
probably a
nobody
good
comes
idea.
shows up.
No, they do. So, not a lot, but when the last changes when you guys made,
Oh, wow.
a lot of people showed up.
For the vote?
No, for the presentations, when you guys, yeah.
It's
The village did-
30 people, was it maybe,
Oh,
at the
wow.
most?
Ours are kind of boring changes because we're mostly just going to comply with
yeah,
state
these are
law.
really technical sort
I
of
wouldn't call it a lot.
fixes. Either way, it'll go,
More than
tonight,
one.
hopefully we get everything done tonight, then on to a public hearing with just this on the agenda for planning commission, then to the select board, they repeat that process. Once they've done that at their next hearing or meeting, then they can vote to approve the language agreed upon at that publicly warned hearing. So pretty much once the planning commission decides on what language it wants, notices that to the public for at least 15 days, and then holds a hearing with that on the agenda, and then votes on the language, falls out of our court, and it's up to the select board to pretty much take it from there. So the fastest way, I was looking into the timing, and the fastest way that we could get this all done would be to approve language tonight, have me put out the proper public notices based on that approved language for an upcoming hearing. We'd also have to push, tonight we have to decide to delay the next meeting by a week, because if we approve language tonight and there won't be enough time for the 15 days to go by before the next regularly scheduled planning commission hearing. So just looking at the calendar, that would be, we'd be scheduled again normally to meet on the 20th, but if we bumped it to the 27th, that would give me enough time to put out the notices, and then that period will have transpired by the time we meet again. So if everyone's cool with that, that's what I was gonna suggest.
Yeah, if you get through everything tonight.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's something we don't have to decide on quite yet. That's the process.
All right, so maybe we'll start with trails,
Yeah.
because in theory, we already, if everything except boards is a refresher.
So is there a copy of,
So it's what Nick only did the links, unfortunately. I actually have one of them I brought with me, which we could pass around.
Or make copies of?
Could you print out just the change
You're only
to
basically,
3.19?
yeah, just the changes would be good.
yeah, the changes without, the detail, page this, page that, and so on, just what are the changes?
So just to refresh everyone, big picture, and then you can look at it. So we changed Article 3 and Article 10. Article 3 being just the general regulations, and Article 10 being the administration and enforcement. And we set up a two-tiered structure, basically. We had to change Article 10 just to comply with Article 3. the two-tiered structure was, just to refresh everyone, if you're doing a public trail and you're not charging people to go on it, there's one set of rules. And if someone wanted, this is never going to happen in my opinion, but if someone wanted to do like a Kingdom Trails type setup here where it's pay to play, then you would have to go to the DRB to get approval. So there was one setup that said, hey, as long as your trail complies with the Underhill Trails handbook and it doesn't have these things wrong with it, then you're good. You don't need approval. You can just go ahead. If it's a pay to play situation, which we don't have, again, it's got to go to the DRB and it's conditional approval setting. So all the changes we made, which Nick's printing and will pass around, we're setting up this structure saying, here's non-pay to play, which is all we have. Here's pay to play. And then in the enforcement section, it says, as long as it doesn't have a parking area, a structure greater than 150 square feet, you're not using motorized earth moving equipment, hopefully this is ringing some bells for people, then you're good. So, and we can pass around that's sort of the exact language we agreed on last time. I found one typo basically that I have marked up here and that I'll pass
That's
around.
all it is for the trails? What about like across the bridges and stuff like that?
Well, you'll see it when we pass it around.
Okay.
The bridges are addressed. It says the bridge has to be approved by a stream alteration engineer of the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources.
All bridges, even if they're over
Only
a
if it crosses a named stream.
stream. So
Okay.
that has to be approved by a state
Correct.
engineer.
Okay,
So if it's over an unnamed stream,
Correct.
so is
the
Brian
next
still
one-
a state engineer?
Yeah.
Brian Peacock?
no, I don't think so. But
Okay.
but if it's an unnamed stream, then he's going to approve it administratively, is what he's proposing, right? Which
Correct.
means that there will be no wording in this document as to how big or
Correct.
that bridge will be. So I kind of have a little problem with that, but I think it just might be because of the ongoing issue, and that's the only reason, is that
Well,
should he,
there's two caveats to that real quick, not to interrupt you. That's not
Yeah.
100% true. So if it's not a bridge crossing a named stream, it would have to be under 150 square feet.
Yeah.
Because it's over 150 square feet, no good. It doesn't go through. And you would have to be in reasonable conformity with the trails handbook. Because remember, we're sort of
Yeah,
deferring to the trails handbook.
Uh-huh.
And then we set this size limitation, which was these things. And then it has this size limitation on it too, of 150 square feet. So if you wanted to build a bridge that was 200 square feet over an unnamed stream,
yeah,
no go. Without approval.
right, okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Because we figured that bridge size, if I'm remembering correctly, we figured that bridge size would make it so it's a reasonably sized.
Right. And boardwalks are totally out of the application process for a permit.
Correct, which was one of I had two, actually don't have one, I had two little cleanup changes that I can pass around here to everyone to these.
Yeah.
So while I didn't see any other, these are just like cleanup changes to the language that we had approved before.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, these are two things we probably need to fix. They're not substantive and everything else looked fine to me.
Yeah.
What was the rationale for bringing in the state engineer for
That
a bridge across the names?
that it was the preferred route because you brought in an expert, and there was no ambiguity, because what we were trying to avoid was passing rules that would leave a bunch of ambiguity and result in litigation. So if it goes to the state and the stream alteration engineer says you're good, then great. It's who's Underhill to contradict the stream engineer from the state of Vermont.
I just think you're gonna be, maybe it's a can of worms, bringing in the state engineer to approve a bridge that, knowing engineers here, that could be a pretty expensive and detailed bridge to pass muster with an engineer's.
I see you, Sandy. I guess the only thing I can say to that is in the public comment, the folks who were most concerned about this seem to like that. I'm not an expert in this. I hear what you're saying, but I know like Mike and Danny thought that was a preferred route
Okay.
versus not
All right.
doing that.
You wouldn't have to pay a state engineer.
Right.
It's, he works for the state, right? He or she would work for the state, right? I would assume.
Right, right.
Yeah. So
they
you
would-
would just have to have them come out and sign off on what you want to do.
Uh-huh.
So an existing bridge does not come into play, right? If it's.
If it's existing, no, because what we're gonna do,
It predates
yes, it predates this and there's that sort of informal rule, but I think one thing we were also gonna do, Nick, is phase 2 of all this. When we go through the whole handbook, the whole zoning regs was have some provision that says basically everything's grandfathered in, basically, which is less to do with trails and just everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
like if you already did something,
Yeah.
whatever, your driveway, whatever, it's done.
Unless there was a regulation at the
Yes.
time.
Yeah. If you violated something.
Right, yeah.
So let me pass this, well, let me read this to you. So if you look at 10.2, the 2 cleanup changes I found were
Is it in the blue?
blue, yeah. B, where it says big B boardwalks, that really should be deleted because we refer to boardwalks up above. So I'm like, we're saying like, yeah, you can do recreational trails, paths, or boardwalks that do not involve the development, construction, or use of the following, and then we refer to boardwalks. So it doesn't make any sense. Like you can do a boardwalk that doesn't require the development of a boardwalk. So I thought we delete the boardwalks below. And then I think on C, bridges, crossing, or access points to rivers or streams identified in 3.9 D1, just to conform with everything we're saying in 3.19, we should add the exact same language that have, that in this case, that have not been approved by the stream alteration engineer of the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources. Just to catch in 319, you're supposed to have it. We say you have to get this engineer sign off. So here, we're listing exemptions. Well, if you don't have that, then you're not exempt. So I think that's just the converse of what we put in 319. So I didn't see anything else. I don't know if anyone else, just because we agreed to it before doesn't mean we need to agree to it now. But,
I had a question, Mike.
Yeah.
I wasn't here for this, but what if like a bridge is damaged by weather or something, like a flood?
yeah,
And would they have to go through the permitting process to say that I want to build it exactly like it was?
that's a good question.
Is,
Fix it.
just fix it. Don't tell anybody.
Like, let's imagine the bridge.
Yeah.
Like if it gets blown out, there's nothing left.
Generally speaking,
What happens?
something that's been properly permitted the first time around can be rebuilt in the same spot that it was.
What if it was grandfathered?
I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah,
actually,
that's
really. Because then you're getting into,
It's non-compliant kind of a structure, basically.
You have it down Walnut Lane, going over the Dean Road. Not
It
Walnut,
seems like the kind of
you
thing
know,
practical to town.
Corbett Road, yeah.
It doesn't seem like the kind of thing the towns
We
want to
all
like
pay for
take a stand on, like you had this thing that you had before, and it's damaged. and now you
Just
need-
Come out.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
it.
I would have to search around in the regulations a little bit more to find all applicable language to this that exists currently before I could really opine. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, like the rule of thumb is like if it's properly permitted and otherwise compliant, then yeah, you can rebuild something that's been destroyed, and then without having to seek special permission. The edge cases are strange. Like, the one that jumps to mind is what happens when someone has a pre-existing non-conforming house in a floodplain or something like a flood hazard zone that gets flooded or otherwise rendered useless. Are they able to rebuild? If it's in a flood hazard zone, then no. But
Really?
I think so. Yeah. Well, the town is, at least not practically speaking, because the town has bought out a number of properties that meet that description.
Really?
Yeah, with FEMA money. Yeah,
Brings
so,
up to the present code, basically,
yeah,
on bridge,
yeah. So, I mean,
unfortunately.
yeah, I mean, I also don't know if maybe some of our language would sort of take care of that case already. So yeah, I'm to be honest with you, I can't. Yeah.
I think I went in front
Oh,
of
Sandy, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Sandy.
Yeah, I just had a question about the pay for play kind of thing. So if you have a membership fees for some group, would that be considered pay for
So
play?
this came up. This came up, and the way the language reads, it says, I don't think so. I think it's very clear, but if someone has concerns about it, maybe we revisit it. But it says open to paying guests and or organizational members and not open to the public. So just to use an example of the only one I'm familiar with, which is the Valley Dream Farm Trails. Yeah, I mean, you could join the Vermont Mountain Bike Association and pay whatever, $25, $50, whatever it is. But if you choose not to join, you can still go ride the trails. I think like another example might be like the Vast. Oh, I don't know about that because I'm not a snowmobile.
You know, is it
I don't think you
Indian
have
Book-
to have the license.
Indian Book Reservoir is now a pay to play. You can't, you
Oh,
can be
yeah.
able to just,
Yeah.
that might be a good example. Are
Yeah.
you familiar with that, Sandy?
It's Essex, right?
In Essex,
Yeah.
Indian Book Reservoir?
Yeah,
So it used to be open, you could just go in and park. Now you have to pay, you have to get a pass.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example because here,
Yeah.
I mean, it says and not open to the public. So I think the key is you could you could have like a club of people who build a trail, but the second you don't make it voluntary, whether you want to join or not, and you close it off, and people don't want to pay, then you've got to go to the DRB.
Where is this located here?
So if you look at 319B, David,
Yeah. 319, B.
B, which is the second category, the pay to play category, and look at like
Okay.
4 lines down. It's literally, this language is identical to the other language, except it says that it's not open to the public. These are identical provisions, except Kale and I added the words
Yeah.
that you're paying and it's not open to the public.
So, does that make it clear, Sandy?
yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions on this stuff? No rush, I just figured ADUs will take more time. ADUs? I think ADUs will take a lot more time. And we sort of already, I don't want to rush you in particular, because you. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, objections to these changes? All right, I figured not. This is the 2 cleanup changes to 10.2. Can I just leave that with you?
You certainly can.
Okay, excellent.
Sorry, one other thing. If we're going to change on section 3.19, we're going to change that to 3.19. That one is supposed to be. We have to make a formatting thing because the reference in this marked up version, this proposed version of 10.2 is not quite correct. Should I just?
What's wrong?
It's section 3.19D1.
That should be right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
I guess it's just missing the E. Okay, I was getting caught up on that.
Because D1's not on that printed page. Remember, 319 D1's referring to name streams.
Right, I got it.
Yeah.
Thrown off there. Okay, never mind. Yeah, so I guess we need a motion.
Or I can send that. Do you want me to change it and send it back to you? To that pretty crappy version.
If you could send me a digital version, that would help.
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion that what am I moving? That we finalize these changes to 319 and 10.2, and after we're finished with the ADU, we send them to the select board.
Well, we'd have to we move towards holding a public hearing to discuss the proposed amendments.
All right, so I'll move that we send 319 and 10.2 as 10.2 is revised to a public hearing to review these. Is there a second?
To set up a public hearing.
Yeah, And then we'll have to, we're not doing anything until ADU, and then we're doing one public hearing. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No, okay. So you want to drive ADUs?
So the ADUs, I have a draft here.
I think we have a volunteer to drive.
Simplifies.
Oh,
everything.
David, do you,
David did a fantastic job with that.
do we have copies?
So this is a condensation, 3 pages. basically.
Thank you. Nice work. The hero award of the night goes to David Edson.
He's been working on this.
Is there any way you can scan that, Nick, and send it to me?
I can take a photo with my phone, Nick, on my scanning app and shoot it to Sandy right away. So she has it.
Or I can also forward David's email to her. I'll just do that. But
Okay.
let me get on taking that.
Yeah.
It's basically a rewrite of the in the general regulations of Article 4, which we haven't really gotten into.
Mm-mm.
But that's where this is clearly defined as to what the limits are for an ADU. So our present 3 pages in the regulation, page 90, 91, and 92, have separate categories for separate sections, basically, for the attached accessory dwelling unit, and then a whole other section for the detached accessory. No reason to have them separately because they both fall under the same regulation, basically. In the state statute, 4412, which is what we're basing our ADUs on, has nice condensed language. So I've gone back to that language basically and taken out our language mostly and stuck to the state statute language. You know,
So this,
Except for the 1,500 square feet.
What's that?
Except for the 1,500 square feet.
No, that's, okay, yes, that,
So
that
can I
is a
ask one
controversial
quick-
point there.
can I ask one quick administrative
Yes.
question before we get into the substance? So just ask a dumb question. What you're saying, David, because I'm looking at those pages,
Yeah.
is we would essentially delete, if, however, wherever we land on this, we would basically be deleting those 2.5 pages, that whole 4.15A, and it would be replaced by this nice short section.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
I want to review it, make sure I got it all in order,
Yeah.
but I think it is pretty much.
Okay.
I got a question about
Sure.
this, that I, for some reason, I just have a problem with this one. Why does the owner need to be occupy one of the units? Why is that a state law?
I'm just following through with what, the state doesn't require that.
That's in our regs now, though.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
why, I
You
mean,
don't have to.
I don't like that. It just doesn't seem like it's, why would you do that? Why would you restrict somebody's ability to do what they want with their property like that? To say they have to live there?
It's just old rules. It more had to do with in-law apartments, so you would be allowed to create an in-law apartment providing it was actually a member of the family there. But now the rules and regs have changed and we have accessory dwelling units
Yeah.
and potentially duplexes.
Are you
So
saying this is the state?
This carries on
No,
basically.
this
The
is-
state says that it should be owner occupied, but we can make it less restricted than the state.
No, the
We
state
can
doesn't.
eliminate that idea if we want to.
But what you
I
sent
carried
around
this
is the
through
current
as-
state law.
What?
This is the current state law, basically, what you
No.
sent around.
Not entirely.
Okay.
Ours is based on the state law, and we're fulfilling it, and we're more liberal than the state's law, actually, which we can do.
But
We
the
can be
state
more
doesn't
lax than the
regulate-
state.
State's not saying that a family member has to live there, does it?
Yes, it does. It says that it must be an owner-occupied property.
That
So
seems
it's
really
the same thing.
restrictive to me. I don't know how everybody
Well, the
else feels about
restriction
it.
on that is, if there's a rationale for it, it would be that it would be a limitation on a big conglomerate of some kind coming in and just buying something up and to turn this into short rentals, Airbnb and so on, and maybe buy up 10 houses in town here. Some owners off in Mexico someplace, or who knows where. So that's the limitation, that's the rationale. You can say we don't want it. Say, let these, out of town, out of state, out of country owners come in and buy what they want to and do whatever they want, basically, as long as it's according to our regulations.
Yeah.
So that's the
But if you own a duplex, you don't have to live there. You can rent it to whoever you want. You can do an Airbnb. You could rent it to a family. So how is an accessory dwelling unit with another house, a house and accessory dwelling unit, any different than a duplex?
It may not
It's a
be in
little
time.
different.
What's that?
It may not be in time.
It's not much. There is a very small difference in the regulatory right of things.
Yeah, it may
Then
not with the new.
it becomes a whole rental rather. It's just the definition of an accessory dwelling is different than a rental. Right? So as long as we're calling it an accessory dwelling, then that's the definition that the owner occupies it. If they don't want to call it that, then they can build apartments, and do it differently, right?
You can have a duplex, you could go for a duplex, but you have to go through a permit process, and there may be a site review of that. You don't get a site review with the accessory dwelling. That's not necessary. So there's that small difference there between a duplex and an accessory dwelling.
Do you think, David, that's why the state has different, when you were researching this, do you think that's why the state has different rules for ADUs, like for
Yeah, I
Airbnbs
think
or whatever?
so. I
Because
think
it's
so.
easier to build the ADU.
Well, you see, they're mandating that towns have to do this, so they're making it a little bit softer than they might, basically. So they want it to happen, and they don't want a rebellion on their hands either.
Yeah, it's more politically palatable.
Yeah.
But the point is to provide more housing, right?
Yes.
So if you're only applying to your immediate family, that's not really solving the.
Yeah, but you're also limiting it to one bedroom.
No,
No, that changed.
We got rid of that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I read the
So
old regs.
just to jump in here, I pulled up and you can see behind me, this is the state, this is 24 VSA 4412. So jumping down to E, except for flood hazard and, et cetera. So here we have the owner occupied lot language here. So no bylaw can prohibit permitted use of one accessory dwelling unit on a single family lot, owner occupied. And it goes on to describe what a ADU is, and then notes that it's got to have these following things. Really just sufficient wastewater capacity, and here's how big it can be. But it also notes that the town may pass a bylaw that is less restrictive than ours, which I guess we can kind of get to when we get farther down in David's draft. But yeah, that's pretty much all that the state has to say on it. It's really just these paragraphs here.
So there is this restriction the town has that it has to be owner occupied, but that can be, but you have 24 months basically if somebody has to move out or the owner dies, so on, and that can be extended another 24 months. And the reason for that was, I think Val was the one that brought this up, that if someone has a military service or something, they may be gone for 4 years. So this would allow for actually a owner to be not on the property for 4 years, basically.
Isn't B like a massive workaround to A though? Because it says if I'm an out-of-state investor and I form an LLC to buy a property in Underhill, so now it's an entity, and I don't live here. I live in, we'll pick on Massachusetts. Why not? It's too easy. Then I just have to appoint my lawyer, pick some lawyer in Vermont or whoever and say, you're my agent. Now I can rent out the house, build
Yeah.
ADU, rent that out.
Yeah.
Because everyone buys investment properties through entities anyway. So I sort of don't understand how A and like, what's the point of A if we have B?
I'll point out too that so far I've not been called upon to enforce any of the owner occupancy requirements one way or another.
Yeah. Well, I know somebody who's doing it, but I'm not gonna report them because I disagree with the
There you go.
laws.
And
This is Roy Dudley. Do you,
but
understand?
I will point out though that the only way that I would find out about such a thing would be through someone telling me. So there's really
Well,
no,
that's
There's really no-
that's how it works for a whole lot.
yeah, a whole lot of things, yeah.
I'm sure there's a
You get
lot
a
more than
complainer,
you don't know.
you get somebody who has a neighborly problem with somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Does B come from the state, David, or is that in our existing
No,
regs?
that's part of Underhill's.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, it guts A pretty much completely.
Well, only if A is registered as an entity other than I mean, they would have to already be registered as an LLC or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying how I feel about, I don't know how I feel about that, but I just.
Well, maybe the point is to have that information provided so the zoning administrator knows that it's.
perhaps a rental registry is kind of what you're
Something
getting
like
at.
Nick, you're really gonna take us off track?
Yeah, you got
Are
a
you
lot
sure
to
you
do.
wanna go down that road?
You're gonna have to hire somebody else.
That's gonna happen. It is.
I agree with you.
Keep in mind that the state is,
Short-term rentals.
yeah, the state is currently, unless something changes with S100, the state is moving towards studying a rental registry
Yeah.
to be debated upon.
There's a
next-
lot of people coming after STR.
Yeah,
short-term rentals.
so I think we can reasonably expect some kind of statewide rental registry action, one way or some kind of
Yeah.
legislative action about a statewide rental registry within the biennium, but I don't think it's gonna, just if I was a betting man, I wouldn't say that it's gonna happen by May.
So if we're just looking at, I mean, do we want to move forward and look at the rest, or are we trying to change this?
Maybe we get all the thoughts on the table and then circle back, or
Okay.
what do you think, Dave?
Okay.
Sure, yeah, we can, we talked that one out, basically. We can continue on and then come back to that if you'd like to.
Okay.
All right, so the next part two, or number two, is property has sufficient water and wastewater capacity to serve both principal and accessory dwelling units as documented, by and so on. The state only says wastewater, it doesn't say potable water. But that
They
may
call
be.
it a water wastewater permit, though.
You
The
need to
permit
get,
is never just a wastewater permit, it's a water wastewater permit.
Okay.
you need to show when you go for this permit, because
Where's the water
I've done
gonna
this
be?
a few times. You need to show that there's enough water in the well for two units.
Okay.
So
Oh.
you can get that information from the state, because every well that's drilled in the state actually has a gallon, tells you how many gallons per minute it is. So your engineer just looks at that information. And
Theoretically, it's there.
yeah, so if it's,
It
yeah,
has to be at least a half a gallon, not much.
And the volume of the reservoir.
Okay, well, okay, so the state regulation only mentions wastewater, but that automatically includes water also, so, okay, all right. So this is okay as it stands, I guess. Any questions about that?
No, get on to three there,
Okay,
David.
three. All right, 3 is different than the states. The state says an accessory dwelling unit does not exceed 30% of the total habitable floor area of the single family dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller.
No, the state says whichever is greater.
The
Actually.
state says which is other.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
well,
Yep.
Okay. All right, so, did we up the,
No, we
area
didn't.
to-
Peter asked for it. Peter
Yeah,
asked
yeah,
for
I
it.
mean,
We
if
didn't.
you're just gonna agree with that.
Well,
because
some of us did.
Yeah,
Oh, did you?
I
Which part, which
Well,
illustrator?
why?
No, 1,500
Oh,
feet,
1,500,
allowing an
oh.
ADU to be 15, that's like another house. That's like a
Yeah,
house the
that's-
size of my house. That's big.
Well, I have
For
another,
an
That's okay.
accessory dwelling unit.
I have another issue with this one, which I'm gonna be a broken record on, but from before, I think it's not fair that if you have a bigger primary residence, you get to build a bigger
Exactly.
ADU.
Yeah,
I think that's-
Well, if you want to, if you really want to help out in the dwelling problem that we have, a 1,500 square foot accessory dwelling would be a family dwelling, basically.
That's
So
not an
that's,
accessory dwelling then. It's accessory to the house.
That's a size.
I think the 1,500 square foot's really big for an accessory dwelling.
It becomes a duplex.
Yes, and
Doesn't
what
it?
happened?
Becomes a duplex, right?
I don't see any reason why you can't allow it.
I think
If
it's
you've
too
got-
big.
What's everybody else think? What do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, yeah.
You go around, Boris?
Well, what's the reason to keep it smaller?
So it's an accessory dwelling unit. It's supposed to be accessory to the main building. So what if your
Yeah.
main building is 1,400 square feet and you're saying, yeah, you go ahead and build some 1,500. It's no longer accessory to the
Well, what
main.
if you have a house that's 400 square feet and then,
So what if you have a house that's 4,000 square feet and you can't, 30% is more than 1,500
I
square?
agree with Brian on that. I think it should just be square feet, in my opinion.
I agree with Boris.
Can we do that?
The
No, the
percentage,
state
go away
says-
with the
the state
percentage.
No,
says-
Yeah, I do too.
Everyone should have the same rule.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree,
Um,
because it seems exclusionary. There.
I'll note that without weighing in on what would be too little or too much, I'll note that at a certain point, and it's hard to say at what point, but a certain square foot point, it does become an effective workaround for permitting a duplex.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
which is important simply because we have a different design review process or permit review process for a duplex than we do for a single family home or for an accessory dwelling unit. So that would create potentially some inconsistencies with the permitting process if someone wanted to take advantage of that to effectively build a duplex without having to do the duplex, permitting process.
So the duplex is just more involved with the engineering.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the difference between a single family home permit and a duplex permit application is that in the rural zoning districts, you have to do a site plan review hearing with the development review board.
Okay.
And that's a design, that's review for design and layout and whatnot, not so much for sort of like merits and neighborhood impact. It's not like a subdivision review, but it is a level of involvement, expense, and time, like expenditure that we would require a lot of duplex applicants to go through. This could be used, like this could be an end run around that.
Do you know, right in Jericho Center, just coming from here, just before the Jericho Country Store, Chuck, what's his last name?
Chuck Lacey.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they put a house, their house faces this way, and then they put a full house going this way. It looks awful. And it just looks bad. The house is as big as, the accessory dwelling is as big as the house, and it just, I don't know, it's just, you're like trying to squish a whole lot into a small space.
What do you think, Bert?
No. I'm not big on limiting size. I don't think it would affect the town to allow bigger size, but is the state gonna tell us we can't go over
Oh,
what
no,
their
we can-
guidelines
well,
are?
we can go over, definitely. We can be, we can allow for a more liberal setup than the state has, so we can do that.
Yeah.
But now, if you have a 1,400 square foot house and you want to put in a 1,500 square foot duplex, you have to go to a different process because that would not be a subordinate structure.
That's my
actually.
point.
It's
What
gonna
you
be
would have to
smaller.
do.
That's my point.
But you could do that. I mean, you can do it basically, but it's a two-step process. Your smaller house that you have would be, have to be transposed into the accessory and the other one into the
Okay.
main dwelling. So it's a two-step process, but you can do
So
it.
that's,
Like, if you have a small house now, your lot actually would support a very a much larger house like my own situation, you know, so you don't want to be trapped with a small house and you can't do anything. So you can, but you have to go through this two-step process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Boris.
So, but I'm in favor of allowing 1,500 square feet. I don't see that it's a problem.
Sandy and Tim, do either one of you want to wait? Tim?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with Lee. I guess it depends on if it's functional or aesthetics. I think aesthetically that it's the accessory dwelling with having a larger home and a smaller home, it kind of balances it. It looks like it's meant to be incorporated within the existing home, as opposed to if it gets larger, you're really looking at two homes on one lot and on the landscape. So that's just my 2 cents. It depends on what the goal is and what people want as a end result.
I also want to make one other point, which is that a duplex in Underhill has to be in the same structure. So this could basically be, because this makes no distinction between a detached and an attached accessory dwelling unit, this could, unless I'm missing something, allow someone to build a 1,500 square foot dwelling on a lot that already has a house in a town where we ostensibly only allow one primary structure per lot.
So it could be an addition.
So, well, I mean,
It lets you break the 10-acre zoning rule basically and chop it down to 5.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, forgetting about the acreage entirely, it just allows you to it basically would allow you to build what could be reasonably considered two primary dwelling units on a lot. And we have a pretty blanket rule saying that there's only one primary dwelling allowed per lot, which is where the ADU, which is what the ADU bylaw is supposed to ease up on. It's supposed to give you an option to have an accessory dwelling, which is, as you know, a pertinent to a primary. So, you know, in a sense, this is actually more liberal than the bylaw that allows for the bylaws that apply to like a duplex, where again, you have to have them housed in the same structure. You can't build a duplex, for instance, that's just two houses separate on one lot, even though they're like, you know, the lot is owned by one person. You couldn't do that. So, yeah.
Sandy, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. I think the percentage should be eliminated. I do think we should include the language of subordinate so that we make sure that the attachment is an accessory rather than a large additional home, really. I'm not clear on the maximum size of 1,500. I mean, that's bigger than my house, so I would hope it could be smaller than that. You know, maybe we should put it down to 1,200 or something, not as large as 1,500.
For me, I guess, just to throw my opinion in there, it's essentially an end run around pretty much every other zoning requirement, so I'm opposed to it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to allow two 1,500-foot homes on a lot, then that's what we should do, because that's all this is.
Yep.
It's an end run around the every zoning rule, basically, in every rural residential, everyone, right? So we should just revisit all those if that's what we want to do.
So,
Right.
our present situation is 900 square feet.
No,
I think.
we're 1,000. We're
It's what?
1,000. 1,000.
It's 1,000.
1,000 for out.
Yeah, I feel like 1,000's good. 1,500 just seems like.
It's a house. It's
Yeah,
not an
it's,
accessory dwelling unit. It's a house.
It's the size of my house. Yeah,
It's the
same
size,
as-
it's bigger than my house.
Yeah.
I mean, when Peter mentioned it, he said it was certainly nice to be able to have a 1,500 square foot house. Well, yes, Peter, that's a house. It's not an accessory dwelling unit. You're gonna have your in-laws live next door and why do they need 1,500 square feet? I don't know.
Or you can do that. You just need a lot that allows you would need 2 lots basically in some of these. I don't know, it just feels like one giant loophole.
I think 1,000 square feet, I'm for 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think we should eliminate the 30%.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and just keep it at 1,000.
Well, what if somebody, so they,
30% and 1,000?
No,
No,
just
just get rid of the 30%.
Well, the state says 30% or 900. And we can't be more restricted than the
well,
state.
we'd be bigger
So
though.
you can't limit
right?
it to,
Oh, you're
You're
saying.
not losing anything
Have
by
to.
making it
No, you have
30%,
to.
basically.
No, because they don't want to build 1,000 square feet, they don't have to.
if
Yeah,
you've got a 5,000
I
square
see what
foot
you're
house,
saying, David.
you know, 30%.
Then you could do
So-
1,500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
but
So
then
the
it's
state
gonna,
says you have to be able to do that.
Mm, I
You
see what
can't
you're
be
saying.
more restrictive than they are.
okay, yeah, right.
okay, so we keep the 30%, and is everybody okay with 1,000 square feet?
I'm good with 1,000.
Well, I'll go along with that. I'm not, you know, married to 1,500.
Is anyone opposed? I guess.
I think 1,000 is too restricted. You know, if you take a single person living in a tiny home, what are they, 400 square feet or something? But they want their elderly parents to come live, and they can't live in a tiny home, you know, that's got to be all in one floor. And I don't
Well,
think
that's
that,
where you make that smaller tiny home the accessory dwelling unit, and you build the primary residence, you can switch it.
Right.
So if you want your parents to come and live on your property with you, you can make yours the ADU and make theirs the primary. But the accessory dwelling unit can't be the same size as the house or bigger. It needs to be subordinate to the main living area, and that's what it's saying.
and the rationale for that is,
It's an accessory dwelling, it's not additional dwelling, it's an accessory to the main property.
But then there's a way, think about this, if you, like my house is 700 square feet, and I would have to build a 1,500?
No, you can
No,
build,
wait a minute.
no,
You
you
can
can
build 1,000.
You don't even have to build, you can build another house if you wanted to on your property. You're under the 1,000 square feet, you could
Oh, I
become
see,
the
okay,
accessory
yeah,
dwelling.
okay.
David
That's
has
a
a one,
two-step process.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
switch.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true. You could go as big as you want.
yeah,
Turn yours into an ADU.
he is an ADU.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
So we keep,
Keep 1,000 or 1,200. Sandy mentioned 1,200.
I'm good with
1,200?
1,000.
Do I hear 1,200?
Auctioneer accent.
I'm good with 1,000.
I'm good with it.
Sandy?
1,000.
All right.
Seems like there's a consensus.
All right, we'll change that to 1,000.
Well, tell Peter I'm sorry.
All right. All right, Peter.
It's all Lee's fault.
He'll see how much it costs to build a 1,500 square foot house, and he'll say, I need to make this smaller.
You'll go 100.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
so we're
good.
settled on that. Okay, so on 4, I thought it important to mention that structures which are pertinent to a single-family dwelling may require a site plan review. Structures are different than the accessory dwelling unit.
So do
They
we
get
even want that,
confused.
do we want that under accessory dwelling unit? I think that's confusing.
No, I think it's, that should be mentioned there because, it's just, you think it's confusing?
Yeah, because we're just talking about ADUs here. We're not talking
Right.
about
Other
structures.
structures.
No, we're not, I know. but
This is another
it's been
structure with an
confused.
ADU in it?
No, but
See,
that
it's been
goes to the
confused
barn.
all the way along.
Oh, I know, and
Yeah,
that's
but-
why I don't want to put it with ADUs. I want structures to come under structures.
I don't,
Well,
what
well, let's see. Maybe
what
we
does
should
this
just say-
mean, to ask the most basic question, sorry, what does it actually mean, that if it's a pertinent to it, what does that, like connector? Yeah, but what
it means, it's,
Two-car garage.
related to it in a subordinate fashion. It can be any structure, basically. Like, you could have a shed that just has, say, a rake in it, that's an appurtenant structure. It could be off on the other side of your property, actually.
Does it mean, so basically just that it's smaller? Or that's
It's,
I Googled
it's
apartment and I
subordinate.
still can figure
Oh,
out.
might be a
exactly.
barn, might be a
Okay.
barn.
Yeah,
But it's
but I think
subordinate.
it should come under structures. I think the whole process is that we were trying to be clear about the difference between structures and accessory dwelling units.
Yeah, we are, but,
But then you have it listed right
So,
under
this is
accessory
to
dwelling
help
units.
clarify that that the structure is distinct from from a detached dwelling unit.
No, I think you should make it clear that it's not a living unit. Structures, non-residential.
I can rewrite this and.
I just think that needs to be clear.
It's confusing.
I'm a little bit confused about the intent of this clause in relation to the accessory
Thank you.
dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Part, like,
The intent is that there's been a confusion right from the beginning about detached dwellings.
right,
Now,
Okay.
if somebody says, okay, well, I want to build a detached structure here for my
accessory dwelling
Dwelling,
unit,
yeah.
right, yeah. So like, I want to purpose build a structure to put and
Well, somebody
permit
might
it
come in
as,
and say, okay, I want to do a detached accessory dwelling.
yeah,
And they're assuming that, okay, I'm going to build this structure next to the house or something.
yeah,
for it.
yeah.
You know,
So this is
And that
to
was-
clear, so is the purpose of this to sort of parse out the accessory dwelling part from the structure in
Yeah.
which it is? So
right,
if I'm reading this right, this is here so that I would be able to say,
Yeah.
yeah, you can get your ADU permit. Your
Right.
plans meet all of the things, but the structure that you propose to put it in
right.
has a few issues because you want to put it in, let's say, a setback. And so you need to go to the DRB and ask for a waiver.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That's the intent.
My suggestion might be, I think that's actually really important to have in there because I don't want to be in the position of having to find justification in the bylaws and argue that in case someone is like, well, you're going to let me build an ADU. It's under 1,000 square feet and it's got wastewater. Why can't I build it where I want it? It would be nice to have justification to say, well, you still got to follow all applicable bylaws. So my suggestion would be either to rewrite this to add, so it would say structures containing ADUs, which, et cetera. I think that would work.
Or ADU
Yeah,
structures.
right. Okay, I'll rewrite that.
Yeah, but why would somebody want to build it in outside the setback?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm just thinking, it would be, I would like to make sure that it would help me in just issuing permits and determining what review process to go through, to be very clear that just because an approval of an accessory dwelling unit is pending, that that doesn't necessarily mean that the structure in which it is in is going to be approved along with that. That is to say, that is to say that the structure still has to meet all the applicable zoning bylaws and regulations.
Right, but if you were building a garage or a barn, you would still have to meet the same setbacks that an accessory
It would.
dwelling
It
unit would
would.
meet. So why would you even need to say that?
I mean, I guess,
Because it might be a constricted site of some kind. And,
Yeah.
Well, that
you
would
may
be,
want to put a structure, that's, it's 10 feet within the setbacks or whatever.
Yeah.
So it has to go through a process.
So I
to
have
be
a
approved
question
for
then.
that.
So the state regulation is saying now that we can't deny someone the right to put in ADU, correct?
Right.
Okay, so
If it meets the conditions.
is that what the state says? If it meets the conditions of zoning? No, it doesn't.
Well, an ADU, yeah, it has to meet certain conditions.
I mean,
It has to meet
wouldn't
the
think
conditions for an ordinary permit, for one thing.
Well,
it doesn't
then
waive
what-
on every other rule.
What was that?
Yeah, there's no way they just waive on every other rule.
Okay,
You could just call it an ADU so you can put it inside the setback and.
yeah.
well,
Oh,
the
no,
setback is
no.
different for an ADU than it is for a house too, right?
is it?
No.
Yeah,
I don't think
no,
so.
it is.
It is.
For an accessory building, it's different. It's 20 feet.
An
Lot
accessory
of-
building or an accessory dwelling?
Well, accessory dwelling unit also. I'm pretty
You know, we're
sure.
actually hitting upon something here important because
Yeah.
there is, we do draw a distinction between a primary dwelling or primary structure and then accessory structure. So if you look on page 7, yeah, so looking at our setbacks, let's take the flats, for example. Minimum setbacks, principal, front side, rear, that's 0 and 20 and 20. Accessory, front side, rear, 0, 15, 15. So there is a difference between accessory and structure. Now, I've interpreted that to mean if someone's got a barn or, you know, or even a purpose-built structure that they want, in which they intend to house an ADU, I do the setback review based on that word accessory. But if someone, but it brings up an interesting question, because what if someone wants to expand their house? Let's say you live in the flats. Let's say you've got a small parcel, and you're not going, and you want to build an ADU, but you don't have room to build, or you just don't want to build a separate structure for that ADU. Your choice for your ADU is to like put an addition on your house, have a separate entrance to that, call that your ADU.
It's an attached ADU.
Yeah, so my question, this is a genuine question, should we look at that as, should we regard that new addition that I'm doing the permit review for as principal or accessory?
Yeah.
Would
For the
depend on
purposes
the-
of measuring setbacks and such.
It would
Well,
depend
well-
on the square footage, wouldn't it? Which one's larger, which one's smaller?
You can't regulate the accessory dwelling in a way that's more restricted than the primary. So.
It already is, it's already a primary residence. If you look at the other
He's saying it's
districts in
looser.
town,
Yeah.
that accessory buildings, the setbacks are less
Yes.
than they are for the primary residence. So that applies not only to accessory buildings, but to accessory dwelling units.
Yeah, once the
Accessory dwelling-
accessory building is there.
Mhm. But I'm saying, what if
You can
what
put
if you're just
your-
expanding your primary structure? What if like there's a house, let's say there's a parcel with one building on it. That one building is a single family home. It is the principal structure. So it has its own set of setbacks that it must meet. What if you want to then expand that, you know, using an ADU? You want to put an addition on that. It makes the footprint larger. And what if that new expansion, that addition, encroaches on a primary setback? So let's say your house
So-
is, the edge of your house is 20 feet, which is the minimum setback for the flats. It's 20 feet from the sideline, and you want to build into that setback, but it's an accessory dwelling. So if you wanted to do a porch, let's say, that's an accessory structure, you could build a 5-foot porch because there's a 15-foot minimum
But
setback.
that's already part of, the porch is part of the original
The primary.
primary.
Yeah.
But also, there's a good chance that if the house is in the flats, that it's a pre-existing non-conforming.
Yeah.
So you can't add on to a non-conforming lot if you're making it more non-conforming.
Correct. Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can't encroach on a setback further
Mhm.
if that.
If it's already non-conforming. I'm just
Right.
thinking about the sort of platonic ideal here, you know, the hypothetical, like, I
Yeah,
guess.
right, you can't, if you have your primary dwelling and you want to have the accessory dwelling, and the accessory is going into the setback,
Mhm.
then it's not following the general regulations of the primary dwelling. So, I
But
mean,
what if it's attached to the primary dwelling?
it's attached to the primary dwelling, but extending into
Yeah.
the setback is not following what the regulations are for the primary dwelling.
Yeah.
So it would not be allowed according to that.
So how comfortable are we with number 4?
I think we need to
I mean, you
I
get a
understand what
waiver
you're trying to
from
do. We just need to clarify it a little bit, because I mean, maybe I'm a dummy, but I didn't understand what we were saying until you guys explained it. So, I understand what you're saying though, David.
Well, just one other point about that, and that is that, if you're expanding or proposing an expansion of an accessory dwelling unit into a setback, which is more than the allowed for a primary dwelling, well, you can go to the Development Review Board and get a waiver.
Mhm. Mhm.
But they won't grant you a waiver because you're creating
Maybe not. Maybe
you're
not.
creating the, what do you call that?
Unless they have to allow you to have that ADU because now you can't restrict someone from having an ADU.
Well, no, it has to follow the same regulations.
As a primary
residence.
Okay. So if that would be the case, and if you're, all right, never mind, I don't want to go there.
We're already looser than the state because to David's point, like, we don't have to have looser setbacks for accessories. We can have them be exactly the same as principal. And if you can't abide by them to build your ADU, well, then you can't build your ADU.
Wow, that's really restrictive when you think about it.
Yeah.
In a lot of lots, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Sandy?
Well, that's.
Yeah, I have a suggestion for a language change on that number 4. We could say accessory structures intended to include accessory dwellings.
Well, intended, that's, I don't know, I don't like the word intended there, because people will, go ahead with something and then, 6 months later or something, oh gee, you know what, really, I want to do this.
Well,
maybe that's in
what
the
are
back
you
of the head
saying here?
Right from the beginning.
What are you saying here?
So this is basically to say that
Accessory dwellings are accessory structures for purposes of these zoning regulations.
that would
That's
that
what
would
we're saying, right?
that would help me out.
You're saying accessional, I think what you're saying is accessory dwelling units are accessory structures for purposes of these regulations.
No,
No, that you don't
Not at
want
all,
to say that.
not at all.
That's where our confusion has been.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to separate accessory dwelling unit and structures. A
Yeah.
structure could be a lean-to, a structure could be a
Well, if
barn.
that's the case then though, then we need to add a line to every zoning district that sets different rules for accessory dwelling units, because there's no setbacks or anything for accessory dwelling units once
It's
we
true.
break them out of structure.
It's a gray.
Well, I
area.
think we should
Yeah.
just stick to the same setbacks for accessory structures and accessory dwelling
Or we
units.
add a word that says accessory dwellings and structures.
Yeah, because if you
Yes.
start restricting the setback,
Well-
you really eliminate the potential that a lot of people have to build an accessory dwelling unit on their property. If you say, oh, well, you gotta keep it 50 feet from the sideline, like your primary residence, and not 20 feet like you have for a garage or a shop you might want to build, then you're eliminating the possibility for a lot of people, which I think if we want to make it easier to do that, we can't do that.
So how would you say it?
Just keep the accessory dwelling unit and accessory structures have this, they can have the same setback.
We need to add a
No,
word.
you mean-
We need
you
to add a
mean the
word. to this
primary-
chart,
The
basically.
primary structure and accessory structures having the same setback.
No, accessory structures and accessory dwelling units have different setbacks.
Well-
If you look at the setback chart, they're different.
They're
You're
significantly different.
confusing the thing again. It's, the structure is different from the accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, well, then we could just say that accessory dwelling units have the same setbacks as accessory
No,
structure.
and you can say that accessory structures have the same setback as primary dwellings. And then if people want to put an accessory dwelling unit in it, okay, and there's no problem. Because the structure is already
But you're already,
within the limits of the primary dwelling.
but you're already restricting the potential that half the lots in town have for building an accessory dwelling unit.
Well, there are restrictions.
I think we just need different wording here.
Yeah, I'm getting super confused. So accessory dwelling units are essentially a subset of accessory structures.
Yeah.
That's what David just said.
Well,
I know.
they're
Right now, they're
different.
treated that way.
They're different.
They're treated the same way as far as setbacks.
No, they're
right, Nick?
not.
Yeah, they are. Look at they are. Because
Yeah. They're actually really more of a subset of the dwelling category. Yeah.
Yeah, but-
My point all along is
Where did
this
it fall in this
conversation
chart?
is happening because you're
It's really
throwing in
not.
Yeah,
structures.
it's not.
It's not.
So
It's-
with
you're gonna,
accessory
It's our
dwelling.
chance to, this is why I'm stuck on this point, because it would really help me out to know how to treat them for the purposes of
So,
setbacks.
David, are you saying, just for purposes of this chart, the setbacks, are you saying that it would abide by the principal residence in your mind? It would abide by the principal residence setback, or would, and I'm not saying this is the word we use, maybe we change it, but are you saying it would abide by the principal residence setback, or by the accessory building setback, or by some other standard?
No, we're facing the problem of wanting to have an accessory dwelling unit that's within a setback. And the way to do that is to have the structures that get a permit be within the guidelines, basically, and not out in the.
But the structure would abide by the current, I'm just trying to untangle this in my head. The structure would abide by what the accessory structures need to abide by right now. Is that what you're saying?
You're still combining
Okay,
accessory.
let me use an exact example for you. So in rural residential, the principal residence is 30, 50, 50
Yeah.
for front,
Okay.
rear, front, side, rear.
Yeah.
But accessory buildings are 30, 20, 20. I purposely picked that one because there's a huge difference.
Accessory
Yeah.
building.
Accessory buildings.
But that's how
So
you. Go ahead.
which category would, however we want, whatever we want to call them, let's forget that for a second. Where would ADUs fall? In the 50 or the 20? I have to untangle these in my
The
head.
ADUs are allowed to be permitted following the regulations of the
Primary
dwelling.
residence, that's what you're saying, primary.
So
residence.
then, it would mean basically that
30, 50, 50.
the structure is not within that, so the
Got it.
answer would be no.
So you
Okay,
guys
how about-
are saying
here's another
very
theoretical question for you. I have a garage that's
Yeah,
20 feet from my sideline. Can
yeah.
I put an ADU in that? I mean, I'm
And
not
what's the
gonna do that,
setback?
but what's that? The
What-
setbacks for the ADU would be 50 feet.
If that's what it is for the primary dwelling, then
So
that's
the
what it
answer is
would be.
no.
So I
I
disagree
disagree
with,
with that.
I do too. I think we
I
should
disagree.
stick with two separate setbacks for the ADU, because you're gonna end up with somebody having to build an accessory dwelling unit right next to their house on a small lot, because
There's
they
no
can't,
setback. Yeah,
it can't be far away from their house. I think it's really too restrictive.
I do too.
Personally.
Well,
That's what it says.
the other thing the other problem that creates is that it also means that someone who has a existing duly permitted accessory structure that is not currently used as an ADU wouldn't be able to convert that into an ADU.
Unless it would happen to be within
happen to
the
be-
rules for the primary residence.
Right. So let's say I have a house and it has to be 50 feet from the sideline, and I have a barn and it's 20 feet from the sideline, as it must be, then I wouldn't be able to convert that to an ADU without violating the bylaw. So that limits the amount of, that would force me to build a new structure or build an expansion onto my house to permit an ADU. So I guess the question is, do folks want to limit that? Like, because I think a lot of the people I've seen come in for ADU applications are, they're building a barn and they want to put an ADU up there, and they're going off of the setbacks for an accessory structure. And we haven't had a problem with that so far. A lot of folks are also seeking to convert an existing structure that meets the setback requirements for an accessory dwelling or an accessory structure. And I don't know if people that change would limit their ability to do so.
We can allow for an accessory dwelling unit to be more lax, be freer in its regulations than the
They already are.
primary dwelling.
So
They already
We
are.
can do that.
yeah.
If somebody could,
It's less restricted than the state is saying.
So I think so. One suggestion would be to say what Brian said earlier, which is to say that for the purposes of applying zoning bylaws, an accessory dwelling unit shall be considered an accessory structure.
But David doesn't want that for a reason that
No,
that
it's
I would
not.
need to understand.
I do
I
too.
don't think you
Yeah.
consider that. Wouldn't.
But if you're giving somebody a permit today, you're gonna give them, for an accessory dwelling unit, you're gonna go by the accessory structure setbacks.
Yes.
Correct? Correct. Yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with sticking with that.
Yeah.
It
It would help me to clarify that a little bit, because it would also mean fewer people coming in and asking questions. And
Well, I
I'd
think-
like to
Well,
make
what
it clear to the
want to stick
applicants
with is
so they can read about
changing
it.
it. It's not having the accessory dwelling unit following the same regulations as the primary dwelling.
It
You want to
already-
make it more lax.
It already is.
It is.
That's
just
what
simply
that's what
what
we
it
keep
is.
saying, it already
Yeah,
is.
I think we all.
Setbacks for the ADUs are already less than the primary residence. We said that like.
The setbacks for accessory structures, which is where I think people.
So I think
yeah.
the real question is an accessory dwelling
An
unit
accessory
an
structure.
accessory structure?
That's
Or,
the
yeah,
question.
that's basically.
I think when, in the chart there that has the setbacks on it, you have to put accessory structures and accessory dwelling
Thank you.
units on the heading and
Thank you.
call it
You
good.
need
to-
Unless everybody thinks we need to say, change the setbacks to the primary setbacks, the primary structure, you know,
I'm not sure I want to
Yeah.
go there.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah, but yes, I think it needs to say accessory dwelling units and accessory structures.
Yeah.
People need to
Yeah,
know
we
there's
just
two
add like
different
3
things.
words to the chart, basically,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and accessory dwelling.
Yeah.
I would still advocate for adding, number 5 here that says for the purposes of.
No, go ahead.
For the purposes of, as someone who has to enforce these, I would prefer to see that enumerated.
What do you want it to say?
I would like to say that it, for, accessory structures, some version of accessory dwelling units shall be considered accessory structures to the purposes of applying, let's say dimensional district standards or something like that.
To have that wording in the bylaws.
Yeah, so that it's not buried in this chart and not addressed in the detail.
Yeah, I think
right
that's
where
what
you
it
go.
should be.
I would like
Doing
to,
something like that.
Yeah.
this is supposed to be just a summary chart, not like not the authoritative language.
What were you saying, David? And
Yeah,
then
I'm
Sandy,
not quite
just
sure
'cause
what
you
you're
were-
saying. You're saying, what are you saying?
I'm saying that it would be good, I think, to clarify, to have language in section 4.15 saying that just clearly states that for the purposes of measuring setbacks, that an accessory dwelling unit shall be considered an accessory structure.
Yeah.
Potentially,
Couldn't you say for the
Potentially,
purposes
yeah.
of measuring setbacks, accessory dwelling units and accessory structures would have the same setbacks? Couldn't you just say that? I'm really in favor of making those two terms separate. Accessory dwelling unit and accessory
I think
structures.
Sandy may have the solution to her problem, or else she has another comment.
No solutions. I'm just trying to think of all the what ifs and what if my neighbor all of a sudden builds, closer than the primary, and now people are living there, and maybe after their relatives pass away, they're renting it, and so it's like it's a whole new thing. It's like changing the primary resident standards, really, because you're letting new homes, because they will be new homes, have closer setbacks.
So are you
And I'm
advocating
all for having more homes. I just want us to be able to think this through totally.
And Tim?
I just had a question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like, I remember when I bought my lot in Underhill, I don't think it had a building envelope, so I could build to the setbacks, where some lots do have building envelopes. So if you had a building envelope, I guess that's deeded, so you would be restricted to the building envelope, and that would affect your.
Yeah, I think a DRB decision or anything that established a building envelope would supersede with that, but that could be correct.
But,
That's a good question.
No, it's true. When we built our barn, we had to go to the DRB and get our building lot changed.
But to Sandy's point, with me not having a building envelope, I could go and, put a house right next to my neighbor, like this away from mine. That would be kind of out of sight, out of mind for me, but it would be right next to him. That would be, you might not like. That would be a.
Which sort of argues for the principal residence.
But now when they do building envelopes, they're making them really quite large, aren't they? Typically when the DRB
I've
does a
seen
site
people mostly
plan.
just ask for the maximum, yeah.
Yeah, they make it as big as it can
Yeah.
within the
They
setback.
just push it to the setbacks,
Right
yeah.
to the-
Yeah,
that's how they're doing it
the
now, I
minimum
believe.
setbacks.
That's how it should be.
Unless there's a compelling reason not to.
Right, unless
Yeah.
there's a wetland or.
Exactly. Steep slopes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or you negotiated with your neighbor or whatever, so.
right.
So I have an administrative proposal for everyone, just because it's 26 after. First of all, thank you, David. for doing all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think
We'll try and clarify the last few points there, so.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a few things people are still thinking about. So my proposal would be that we forget about our thing about the moving it back a week. Let's do our regularly scheduled meeting in 2 weeks. Goal being to get through, if everyone's cool with this, goal being, let's get through ADUs. If time allows, maybe for the agenda, we can talk about barns for your thing, because it's kind of a follow-up, like accessory
really is.
structures. You know,
Oh, you mean
weddings,
conversions.
yeah. So let's make that topic too, just because it flows on, if we finish ADUs. And then we'll get back on your awesome timeline of actually getting these done. So
Yeah.
it's like a 2-week delay to the timeline that you had. laid out.
Yeah, let's just take a quick look at the calendar. That pushes us into May when we'd be, so that would mean that we'd meet on the 20th and continue this discussion on the 20th with a goal of finishing up If we do that, we would still have, and we want to do the accelerated, or we want to move straight to, let's say, move straight to a hearing, a noticed hearing. We'd still have to delay a week because the next regularly scheduled PC meeting would be May 4th.
Okay,
So, just putting that out there. We
Okay.
instead could delay to May 11th and then have a planning commission meeting then.
I won't be here for the 20th.
I won't either.
Okay.
Oh, you won't either?
For the 20th?
May 20th, no.
So April 20th.
Oh, April 20th.
Oh,
Yeah,
April.
our next
April,
regularly
I won't
scheduled.
I won't be here for that
You
one.
won't be here. Okay.
I will be, but
You will.
I don't know. Yeah. Somebody's not gonna be here, right?
Me.
Well, we want you here for this. Like,
Well, I'm gonna be in Dubai.
you know, right? You're not gonna join us, like.
Yeah, that's where Shelby is. Right? We're gonna go visit.
Oh my God.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like we need to make any decisions. We can just kind of resume on
I
the
think
20th.
goal is, let's try to finish this on the next meeting,
Yeah.
and then we'll
I actually
maybe,
am impressed we
if
got.
we have free time, hop to the wedding venue thing or whatever, just to fill time, because it's sort of tangentially related,
Yeah,
and then we'll get back on your plan.
okay, sounds good.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
That's very cool. I think. Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
Sir, David, thank you so much.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
really, really helps. I love the idea of
Simple.
combining,
Yeah.
like eliminating the distinction between external and attached. I think it really helps everyone, especially applicants, and that's really important because people should be able to read these bylaws and know what they mean without having to have some kind of like
We don't
wizard,
even know.
come and interpret it for them.
You
Yeah.
gotta change that one word there. Number 2 bit. Even the lawyer didn't know what that meant.
sorry, Google it, I still don't know what it meant. It was like, it has a relationship to the primary thing. I'm like, great.
That's funny.
thanks.
That's one. That's funny because I took one law class when I was in grad school, and that was one of the words that our professor insisted that we
The pertinent.
take. Yeah, pertinent. She's like, this one's really important with land use law, so you gotta know it. And she was right.
I'm a fan of paying attention to that.
It's a pertinent here.
What, 4 or 5 years ago, the word
Oh,
over and over.
Well, thank you, everyone. Does someone want to make a motion to take us out? David?
Sure.
Is there a second? Mark's got it. All in favor?
Aye. Thanks for all your work.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice to see you, Sandy.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Sandy.